when the Council witnessed humanity's polite side turn dark in real time. The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of pristine white marble, its domed ceiling displaying the swirling colors of nearby nebulae through transparent aluminum. Representatives from 237 species sat in carefully arranged sections, each designed to accommodate their unique biological needs. The air hummed with translation devices, working overtime to convert thoughts, sounds, and pheromones into understandable communication. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the human delegation's modest section, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore the standard diplomatic uniform of Earth, a simple navy blue suit that seemed almost primitive compared to the crystalline armor of the Zephyrians or the flowing energy fields that served as clothing for the Luminar. At 43, Elena had spent the last 8 years representing humanity in various galactic forums, always with the same patient smile and measured words that had become her trademark. The human representative may now address the Council regarding the territorial dispute in the Kepler 442 system, announced High Arbiter Thexnal, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he spoke. The tall, insectoid being had presided over council sessions for nearly 2 centuries, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Elena stood gracefully, her movements precise and respectful. She had given hundreds of such presentations, each one a careful balance of diplomacy and advocacy for human interests. The Kepler 442 system contained 3 habitable worlds, 2 of which humans had been terraforming for the past 15 years. The Vorthak hegemony, a militaristic species known for their aggressive expansion policies, had recently claimed the entire system based on what they called historical migration patterns. Honored Arbiter, esteemed council members, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. Humanity wishes to express our gratitude for this opportunity to present our perspective on the Kepler 442 situation. We understand the complex nature of territorial disputes and the importance of maintaining galactic peace. Several species representatives leaned forward in their seats. The humans were known for their diplomatic approach, sometimes frustratingly so. Where other species might issue ultimatums or threats, humans typically offered compromise and sought middle ground. Our colonies on Kepler 442b and Kepler 442c have been established through proper channels, with full environmental impact assessments and compliance with all council regulations, Elena continued. Over 40,000 human families have made these worlds their home. They have built schools, hospitals, and research facilities. Children have been born there who know no other sky. Warlord Gextul of the Vorthak delegation rose from his seat, his massive frame casting a shadow across several nearby representatives. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick, scaled hide and prominent bone ridges across his skull, he embodied the aggressive nature of his species. When he spoke, his translator struggled to soften the harsh growling tones of his native language. The human speaks of children and homes as if emotion grants territorial rights, Gextul declared. The Vorthak have ancient claims to this region of space. Our ancestors hunted in these star systems when humans were still cowering in caves on their birth world. Elena's smile never wavered. With respect, Warlord Gextul, the Council's own historical commission found no evidence of permanent Vorthak settlements in the Kepler 442 system. While we acknowledge that Vorthak ships may have passed through this region, transit does not establish territorial sovereignty under current galactic law. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The human was technically correct, but challenging Vorthak claims directly was considered provocative by many species. The Vorthak were known to respond poorly to such challenges. Gextul's bone ridges flared, a sign of rising anger among his people. Human words twist like serpents. You speak of law while you steal worlds that rightfully belong to stronger species. Perhaps it is time to settle this matter in the traditional way. If by traditional, you mean through the proper legal channels established by this council, then we absolutely agree, Elena replied smoothly. Humanity has always preferred dialogue over conflict. We believe there may be room for compromise in this situation. High Arbiter Thexanol's translation device crackled as he prepared to speak, but Gextul cut him off with a roar. Enough of this weakness. The Vorthak Empire claims the Kepler 442 system in its entirety. Any human presence there beyond the next solar cycle will be considered an act of war. We will take those worlds by force if necessary. The chamber fell silent. Direct threats of warfare during council sessions were technically violations of diplomatic protocol, but the Vorthak were known for pushing boundaries. Many species had learned to accommodate their aggressive nature rather than risk conflict. Elena's expression didn't change. She continued to smile politely, though something subtle shifted in her posture. Warlord Gextul, are you formally declaring hostile intent toward human colonies and the 40,000 civilians residing there? I am declaring that the Vorthak Empire will reclaim what is ours. If humans choose to stand in our way, they will face the consequences. I see. Elena paused, her smile still in place, but somehow different. The warmth had drained from it, leaving something that looked pleasant, but felt wrong. May I request a brief recess to consult with my government? High Arbiter Thexanol nodded. The council will recess for 1 standard hour. As representatives began filing out of the chamber, Elena remained seated, her hands still folded in her lap. She activated a secure communication link with Earth, her voice remaining perfectly calm and professional. This is Ambassador Vasquez, requesting immediate conference with the Diplomatic Corps leadership and... She paused for just a moment. Admiral Chen of the Strategic Defense Command. The response came within minutes. Elena nodded to herself as she received her new instructions, her expression never changing from that polite, empty smile. When the council session resumed, Elena stood with the same graceful movement as before. But somehow, without changing anything visible about her appearance or mannerisms, she seemed different. Several sensitive species representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats without understanding why. Honored Arbiter, esteemed colleagues, Elena began, I have consulted with my government regarding Warlord Gextul's statements. We appreciate his candor in making his intentions clear. She turned slightly to face the Vorthak delegation. In the interest of maintaining the diplomatic principles this council was founded upon, I feel I should clarify something about humanity that may not be widely understood. The chamber had grown unusually quiet. Even species that didn't rely on auditory communication seemed to sense that something important was about to happen. Many of you know humans as cooperative, peaceful beings who prefer negotiation to conflict. This is absolutely true, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. What perhaps hasn't been emphasized sufficiently is why we prefer peace. She paused, allowing her words to settle. Humans didn't develop our diplomatic nature because we are weak or naive. We developed it because we are very, very good at warfare, and we've learned to fear what we become when we embrace that aspect of our nature. Warlord Gextul snorted derisively. Human boasting. Your species has barely begun to explore space while the Vorthak have conquered dozens of systems. Elena's smile widened slightly. You're absolutely right, Warlord. We are newcomers to galactic civilization. But perhaps you should ask yourself why a species as young as humanity was invited to join this council. Why we were given voting rights and territorial sovereignty despite our brief presence in space. She activated a holographic display that materialized above the chamber floor. It showed star charts of human space, but not the peaceful colonies and research stations most council members were familiar with. Instead, the display highlighted military installations, fleet positions, and defensive networks that few non-humans had ever seen detailed. For the past century, human civilization has been united under a single government for the first time in our species' history. Do you know how many separate nations existed on Earth before unification? 196. Do you know how long our recorded history of organized warfare spans? Approximately 5,000 years. The hologram shifted, showing historical data about human conflicts, numbers that made several species representatives physically recoil. In our last global war, fought with relatively primitive technology, we killed 70 million of our own kind in 6 years. We developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets while we were still confined to a single world. We nearly rendered our own home uninhabitable multiple times, not through accident, but through the deliberate application of military force. Elena gestured to the display, her polite tone never changing. This is why we prefer diplomacy, Warlord Gextul. Not because we cannot fight, but because we know exactly how much damage we can cause when we stop being polite. Murmurs spread through the chamber as species representatives processed this information. Many had assumed human pacifism came from weakness or inexperience. The idea that it might be a choice made from a position of terrible strength was disturbing. Human threats mean nothing, Gextul declared, though his voice lacked some of its earlier confidence. The Vorthak Empire has never been defeated in open warfare. I'm sure that's true, Elena agreed pleasantly. But I should point out that we're not threatening you, Warlord. We're simply ensuring that all parties understand the full context of the situation. She touched a control on her podium, and the holographic display changed again. Now it showed real-time positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. There were far more than most council members had realized, and many were in positions that suggested they had been there for quite some time. Human diplomatic doctrine includes what we call proportional response protocols, Elena continued conversationally. When faced with direct threats to civilian populations, we are authorized to escalate our response accordingly. The threat to 40,000 human civilians in the Kepler 442 system has moved this situation from a territorial dispute to a potential security crisis. High Arbiter Thexnall leaned forward in his seat. In all his centuries of service, he had never seen a human delegation take such an assertive stance. Ambassador Vasquez, are you suggesting military action? Not at all, Honored Arbiter. I'm simply ensuring that Warlord Gextul has complete information before making his final decision. Elena's smile had become something that resembled the expression wolves made when showing their teeth. We want him to understand exactly what facing the consequences might entail. She activated another display. This one showed detailed specifications for human military technology, energy weapons that could crack continents, ships designed for extended combat operations, and manufacturing capabilities that could produce vast fleets in remarkably short time frames. You see, Warlord, when humans unite for war, we don't just fight to win. We fight to ensure that the war ends permanently and completely. We have extensive experience in what we call total warfare, the complete destruction of an enemy's capacity to make war, their infrastructure, their economy, and their ability to threaten us ever again. The chamber had become completely silent except for the hum of translation devices working frantically to convey concepts that many species had never encountered. But we really don't want to do that, Elena added, her tone brightening as if discussing pleasant weather. It's messy, expensive, and it tends to make other species nervous. Much better for everyone if we can resolve this through negotiation. Warlord Gextul had gone very still. His species might be aggressive, but they weren't stupid. The humans' presentation had revealed military capabilities that exceeded anything the Vorthak possessed, combined with a strategic mindset that was utterly foreign to their understanding of warfare. Perhaps, Gextul began slowly, there is room for discussion about mining rights in the outer system. while recognizing human colonial sovereignty on the inhabited worlds. Elena's smile returned to something resembling warmth, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Now that sounds like the beginning of a productive conversation, Warlord. I'm sure we can find a mutually beneficial arrangement. As the session continued with suddenly cooperative discussions about resource sharing and territorial boundaries, representatives throughout the chamber began to reassess their understanding of humanity. The polite, peaceful species they thought they knew had revealed something far more complex and potentially dangerous underneath. Elena Vasquez continued to smile, nod, and speak in measured diplomatic tones. But everyone in the chamber now understood that they were seeing only the very tip of what humanity could become when their polite facade began to slip away. When the council witnessed humanity's polite side turn dark in real time, continued. 3 days after the dramatic council session, the Galactic Communications Network buzzed with unprecedented activity. Every major news outlet, diplomatic channel, and intelligence service across known space was analyzing footage from the human delegation's presentation. What many had initially dismissed as sophisticated bluffing was rapidly being confirmed as terrifyingly real. High Arbiter Thexanol sat in his private chambers, reviewing reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of humanity's true capabilities. His 4 eyes moved independently as he processed multiple data streams simultaneously, a skill that had served him well in 2 centuries of diplomatic service. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he was learning about Earth's newest citizens. A soft chime announced an incoming priority communication. The holographic image of Ambassador Cathara of the Selenian Collective materialized before him. Her crystalline features reflecting anxiety in the way light refracted through her translucent skin. "High Arbiter," she began, without preamble. "My intelligence services have completed their analysis of the human military data from 3 days ago. We need to discuss the implications immediately." Thexanol gestured for her to continue, though he suspected he already knew what she was going to say. The specifications Ambassador Vasquez presented weren't exaggerated or theoretical. They were conservative estimates of current human capabilities, Cathara said, her voice carrying harmonics that indicated deep concern. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive fleet movements throughout human space. Ships that don't appear on any of their official registries." The High Arbiter's upper eyes focused on her, while his lower eyes continued reviewing the reports on his desk. "How massive?" "Conservative estimates suggest they have at least 3 times the military assets they've officially declared to the Council. Possibly more. Some of our long-range sensors are detecting energy signatures that don't match any known technology database." Before Thexanol could respond, another priority signal chimed. This time it was General Vexoth of the Kraken Defense Consortium, a military advisory body that provided security assessments for neutral species. The general's scaled features were grim as his image joined the conversation. "Arbiter, Selenian Ambassador," Vexoth said with crisp military efficiency. "I trust you're both reviewing the same intelligence reports that crossed my desk this morning." "The human fleet movements?" Cathara asked. "That's just the beginning," Vexoth replied. "We've been analyzing their industrial capacity based on energy consumption patterns across their territory. The numbers don't add up unless they're operating massive military production facilities that we've never detected." The general activated a holographic display showing energy usage across human space. Bright spots indicated known colonies and installations, but there were gaps. Areas where energy consumption suggested major activity, but no official facilities appeared on any diplomatic records. Based on these patterns, we estimate they could be producing military hardware at a rate that would allow them to match the combined fleets of any 3 major powers within a standard year, Vexoth continued. The infrastructure required for such production would have taken decades to build. Thexnal's translation device crackled as he processed this information. Are you suggesting they've been preparing for large-scale conflict since before they joined the Council? I'm suggesting they've been preparing for large-scale conflict since before they left their home world, the general replied grimly. The psychological profiles we've developed indicate that human diplomatic behavior isn't just cultural preference, it's strategic doctrine. They prefer peace because they're so thoroughly prepared for war that any conflict would result in disproportionate devastation. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Council's Intelligence Division. Director Nalthek, a species known for their analytical capabilities, appeared in the holographic conference with obvious distress written across his tentacled features. Hi, Arbiter. I'm transmitting classified findings about human military doctrine that you need to see immediately, Nalthek said without greeting. We've been analyzing historical data from Earth's information networks, cross-referencing with their current diplomatic positions. A new display materialized, showing a timeline of human conflicts throughout their recorded history. The pattern was consistent and chilling, periods of devastating warfare followed by technological advancement and territorial expansion. Every major conflict in human history resulted in rapid development of more destructive weapons and more effective military strategies, Nalthek explained. But more importantly, they developed what they call just war theory, a philosophical framework that allows them to escalate violence to any necessary level as long as they can justify it morally. Keth Ara's crystalline features shifted to deeper blue hues, indicating severe distress. What does that mean in practical terms? It means they've created ethical systems that permit unlimited escalation in response to threats against civilian populations, the intelligence director replied. Ambassador Vasquez wasn't making threats 3 days ago. She was providing a formal notification of their response protocols. General Vexoth leaned forward in his display. Director, what's your assessment of their actual military capabilities? Nalthek's tentacles writhed in what his species considered a gesture of uncertainty mixed with fear. Based on energy signatures, industrial capacity, and historical patterns, we believe humans could deploy force sufficient to destroy any single council member species, possibly any combination of 2 or 3 member species. The silence that followed was broken by Thexanal's quiet question. And if they united their entire military capacity against a single target? Complete annihilation, Nalthek replied without hesitation. Not conquest, annihilation. Their military doctrine includes something they call existential response theory. If they believe their species' survival is threatened, they are prepared to eliminate threats so completely that they can never arise again. Meanwhile, in another part of the galactic capital, Warlord Gextul paced angrily through his private quarters aboard the Vorthak diplomatic vessel. His bone ridges were fully flared in a display of rage that would have sent any member of his species fleeing in terror. But rage was mixing with something the Vorthak rarely experienced, genuine fear. His chief military advisor, Commander Thekrul, stood at attention while delivering reports that grew worse with each update. Warlord, our intelligence services have completed their assessment of human military capabilities as demonstrated in the council session, Thekrul reported. The data suggests that a direct conflict would be inadvisable. Gextul spun to face his subordinate, his massive frame casting shadows across the room. Inadvisable? The Vorthak Empire has never retreated from inferior species. With respect, Warlord, the humans may not be inferior, Thekrul replied carefully. Our analysis indicates they possess weapons technology that exceeds our own in several key areas. More concerning is their apparent industrial capacity for sustained warfare. The commander activated a holographic display showing comparative military assessments. Their presentation indicated they could produce fleet assets at rates that would overwhelm our replacement capabilities. Even if we achieved favorable casualty ratios, they could potentially outlast us through sheer production volume. Gextel stared at the data, his warrior's instincts warring with practical reality. The Vorthak had built their empire through superior force and aggressive expansion, but they had always been careful to choose conflicts they could win decisively. "What about allies?" the warlord demanded. "Other species who resent human expansion?" "We've made discreet inquiries," Thekrul admitted reluctantly. "Most potential allies are reconsidering their positions based on the same intelligence we've gathered. The Harlex Confederacy has already sent unofficial messages suggesting they would remain neutral in any human-Vorthak conflict." The truth was even worse than Thekrul was willing to admit directly. Several species that had previously been aligned with Vorthak interests were now quietly reaching out to human diplomatic channels, apparently hoping to improve their own relationships with what they now recognized as a major galactic power. Gextul's rage was slowly being replaced by the cold calculation that had made him an effective military leader. The humans had outmaneuvered him completely, not through superior force, but through superior intelligence and patience. They had entered galactic society appearing weak and cooperative while building capabilities that could challenge any existing power. "Commander, prepare a formal communication to the human delegation," Gextel said finally. "We will request negotiations regarding resource-sharing agreements in the Kepler 442 system." "Yes, Warlord. What terms should I indicate we're willing to consider?" Gextul's bone ridges flattened against his skull in resignation. "Whatever terms they find acceptable, within reason. The Vorthak Empire does not begin conflicts it cannot win." Back in the council chambers, Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat quietly reviewing reports from Earth while she waited for the next diplomatic session to begin. Her expression remained pleasant and professional, but she was monitoring communication channels that revealed the growing ripple effects of her presentation 3 days earlier. A secure message from Admiral Chen appeared on her private display. "Elena, excellent work. Fleet positioning is proceeding as planned. Intelligence indicates multiple species are reassessing their relationships with both us and each other. The psychological impact appears to be exactly what we projected." Elena typed a brief response. "Diplomatic channels are opening faster than expected. Several species are requesting bilateral meetings to clarify mutual interests. Recommend we maintain current posture. Helpful but not eager." The strategy was working perfectly. By revealing just enough of humanity's true capabilities to establish credibility while maintaining their reputation for preferring peaceful solutions, they had created a position of enormous diplomatic leverage. Other species now wanted to negotiate from positions of cooperation rather than competition. Another message appeared, this one from the Galactic Trade Consortium requesting human participation in expanded economic partnerships. Elena smiled genuinely for the first time in days. The revelation of military strength was opening doors for economic and scientific cooperation that would have taken decades to achieve through traditional diplomatic channels. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication from Warlord Gextul's delegation. Elena accepted the call, noting that the Vorthak leader appeared considerably less aggressive than during their last interaction. "Ambassador Vasquez," Gextul said, his tone carefully formal. "The Vorthak Empire wishes to propose direct negotiations regarding the Kepler 442 system. We believe mutually beneficial arrangements can be established." "Warlord Gextul, I'm delighted to hear that," Elena replied warmly. "Humanity has always believed that cooperation produces better outcomes than conflict. When would you like to begin discussions?" "As soon as convenient for your delegation," Gextul said. "We are prepared to be flexible regarding territorial boundaries in exchange for access to mining rights in the outer system planets." Elena nodded pleasantly. "That sounds like an excellent starting point for negotiations. Shall we schedule a formal meeting for tomorrow?" As the communication ended, Elena reflected on how rapidly the situation had transformed. 3 days ago, the Vorthak had been making direct threats of war. Now they were requesting negotiations and offering concessions. The shift demonstrated something important about galactic politics that many species hadn't fully understood. Power wasn't just about having superior weapons or larger fleets. Power was about other species believing you had superior weapons and larger fleets, combined with the will to use them if necessary. Humanity had spent decades quietly building both the reality and the reputation, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true position. The next phase would be even more delicate. Now that the galaxy understood humanity's capabilities, the challenge would be using that knowledge to build lasting partnerships rather than fearful submission. Elena was confident they could manage that transition, but it would require the same careful balance of strength and restraint that had brought them this far. As she prepared for the next round of diplomatic sessions, Elena allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The galaxy was about to discover that humans could be even more dangerous as friends than they were as enemies, because once you became humanity's ally, they would go to absolutely any length to protect you. And that protection came with the full force of the most terrifyingly effective military machine the galaxy had ever seen, operated by a species that had spent 5,000 years perfecting the art of warfare before deciding they preferred peace. When the Council witnessed humanity's polite side turn dark in real time, final 6 months after Ambassador Elena Vasquez's revelation in the Council chambers, the galactic political landscape had transformed beyond recognition. What began as a territorial dispute over 3 planets had cascaded into a fundamental restructuring of interspecies relationships throughout known space. Elena stood before a massive holographic display in the newly constructed human diplomatic complex on New Geneva, humanity's administrative center for galactic affairs. The display showed real-time positioning of ships, trade routes, and communication networks across 200 systems. What had once been a scattered collection of isolated human colonies was now the hub of an intricate web of alliances and partnerships. The Selenian Collective has just transmitted their formal agreement to the Defense Pact, reported Director Sarah Chen, Elena's chief diplomatic coordinator. That brings our mutual defense network up to 43 member species. Elena nodded, studying the tactical implications. The mutual defense agreements weren't traditional military alliances. They were something entirely new in galactic politics. Each species contributed according to their capabilities while receiving protection proportional to their strategic value. Humanity provided the overwhelming majority of military strength, while partners contributed intelligence, logistics, rare resources, and technological expertise. "Any word from the Kraken Defense Consortium?" Elena asked. "They're requesting a private meeting to discuss security consultation services," Sarah replied with a slight smile. "Apparently, several of their clients are nervous about the new political balance and want human military advisors." The irony wasn't lost on Elena. 6 months ago, the Kraken Consortium had been analyzing human capabilities as a potential threat. Now they wanted to hire human expertise to help their clients navigate a galaxy where humanity had become the dominant military power. A priority communication interrupted their review. Admiral Rebecca Torres materialized in holographic form, her expression serious but not alarmed. "Elena, we have a developing situation in the Outer Rim. The Zerathi Empire has launched an attack against the peaceful collective of Mindarin. The Mindarin are part of our defense network as of last month." Elena felt a familiar chill. The Zerathi were one of the few species that had responded to humanity's revealed capabilities with increased aggression rather than diplomatic outreach. They were an ancient empire that had dominated their region of space for millennia through overwhelming technological superiority and a philosophy that considered most other species inherently inferior. "What's the scale of the attack?" Elena asked. "Full military assault on 3 Mindaran colonies. The Mindaran defense forces are being overwhelmed. They never developed significant military capabilities because they relied on their pacifist reputation for protection." Elena was already moving toward her command station. The peaceful collective of Mindaran had joined humanity's defense network specifically because their philosophy made them unable to protect themselves from aggressive neighbors. They were renowned throughout the galaxy for their contributions to art, philosophy, and scientific research, but they had never developed weapons technology beyond basic defensive systems. "Admiral, please implement Defense Protocol 7, full spectrum response authorized." Torres nodded grimly. "Elena, you should know. The Zarathi have been monitoring our communications. This appears to be a deliberate test of human resolve. They want to see if we'll actually honor our defense commitments when it means fighting a major power." The implications were staggering. If humanity failed to respond effectively, every species in their defense network would question the value of human protection. Worse, aggressive powers throughout the galaxy would interpret it as evidence that human military capabilities were exaggerated. "Admiral, what's our current fleet positioning in that sector?" "The 7th Deep Space Fleet is conducting exercises 2 systems away. 60 ships including the new Beijing-class dreadnoughts. We also have advanced scout forces throughout the region." Elena accessed her diplomatic protocols, her mind racing through the cascading consequences of various response options. Too little response would undermine human credibility. Too much might trigger broader conflicts with other powers who would see overwhelming force as a threat to galactic stability. "Sarah, send immediate communications to all Defense Network members and neutral parties. Formal notification that humanity is responding to an unprovoked attack against a treaty ally. Emphasize that this is a limited action in defense of established agreements." "Already composing the messages," Sarah replied, her fingers flying over multiple communication interfaces. Elena activated a direct link to Earth's Strategic Command. President Martinez appeared on screen within seconds, her expression indicating she was already briefed on the situation. "Elena, the Cabinet has reviewed the situation and authorized full response. The Zarathi have chosen this confrontation deliberately, and our intelligence suggests they're coordinating with several other aggressive powers to test our resolve." "Understood, Madam President. What are our operational parameters?" "Complete protection of Mindaran territory and population, neutralization of Zarathi military capability in the affected systems. Rules of engagement authorize whatever force is necessary to end the threat decisively." Elena felt the familiar weight of representing humanity at a moment when their actions would reshape galactic politics. "Madam President, should we be concerned about escalation with other Zarathi allies?" "Our intelligence indicates that most potential Zarathi allies are waiting to see the outcome before committing to any course of action. A decisive response now will likely prevent broader conflict later." The communication ended, and Elena turned back to Admiral Torres. "Admiral, you are authorized to commence military operations. Objective is complete protection of Mindaran territory and elimination of Zarathi capability to threaten our allies." "Understood. Elena, you should know, we've been developing some new capabilities specifically for situations like this. The Zarathi are about to learn why humans prefer diplomacy." Across the galaxy, the Zarathi High Command was monitoring human communications with confident satisfaction. Emperor Velnash, supreme ruler of the Zarathi Empire, reviewed battle reports from his crystalline throne aboard the massive command vessel Infinite Dominion. "The Mindaran colonies are falling faster than projected," reported General Kakseth. "Their defensive capabilities are even more limited than our intelligence suggested. We should have complete control of all 3 systems within 2 standard days." Excellent, Velnash replied, his translated voice carrying harmonics of satisfaction. And the human response? Limited diplomatic protests so far. Some fleet movement, but nothing indicating serious military commitment. It appears their much-vaunted military power was largely psychological warfare. Velnash had ruled the Zarathi Empire for over 3 centuries, expanding its territory through carefully calculated demonstrations of overwhelming force. In his experience, species that preferred diplomacy over warfare were invariably weak when faced with determined aggression. The humans would protest, perhaps impose trade sanctions, but ultimately accept the loss of their ally rather than risk serious conflict. General. Maintain current operational tempo. When the humans fail to respond effectively, other species in their so-called defense network will begin reconsidering their alliances. We may be able to absorb several more systems without significant resistance. The confidence lasted exactly 17 minutes. Emperor! General Kakseth's voice carried new harmonics indicating extreme distress. We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the Mindaran systems. Multiple human fleets moving faster than our projections indicated was possible. Velnash's attention focused sharply on the tactical displays. Ships were appearing on long-range sensors in numbers that exceeded the total human fleet strength in their intelligence databases. How many vessels? He demanded. Current count is over 200 ships, with more arriving continuously. Emperor, some of these energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. We may have significantly underestimated human military capability. Before Velnash could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the human forces. The image that appeared on the main display was Admiral Torres, her uniform crisp and her expression coldly professional. Emperor Velnash, Torres began without preamble. You are conducting unprovoked military operations against a species under the protection of the Human Defense Network. You have exactly 30 minutes to begin withdrawal from all Mindaran territory. Velnash's natural arrogance overcame his growing unease. Human Admiral, your threats carry no weight with the Zarathi Empire. We do not recognize your authority in this region of space. Your recognition is not required, Torres replied calmly. You now have 29 minutes and 30 seconds to commence withdrawal. After that time, any Zarathi military assets in Mindaran space will be considered hostile targets and dealt with accordingly. The transmission ended before Velnash could respond. Around the bridge, his officers exchanged glances that mixed confusion with growing alarm. The human admiral had spoken with the confidence of someone who held overwhelming superiority, but Zarathi intelligence insisted that was impossible. General, analysis of the approaching human forces? Kakseth's report destroyed any remaining confidence. Emperor, preliminary scans indicate weapons technology beyond our current understanding. Energy output from their largest vessels exceeds our own flagship by orders of magnitude. More concerning, their fleet formations suggest tactical doctrines we've never encountered. Recommendations? For the first time in his military career, General Kakseth hesitated. Emperor, conventional wisdom would suggest strategic withdrawal until we can properly assess the actual scope of human capabilities. Velnash stared at the tactical display, watching human ships position themselves with precision that indicated extensive battle experience. Everything about their movements suggested they were prepared for immediate, overwhelming action. How long until our reinforcement fleets arrive? Minimum 6 standard days, Emperor. The humans had deliberately chosen their timing. They had caught the Zarathi forces extended and isolated, too far from support to receive assistance. Velnash was beginning to understand that he had not stumbled into a test of human resolve. He had walked into a trap designed to demonstrate human capabilities to the entire galaxy. General, signal withdrawal from Mindaran space. Full-speed retreat to Zarathi territory. Yes, Emperor. The Zarathi withdrawal was efficient and rapid, but it wasn't fast enough. As their ships attempted to disengage, human forces demonstrated capabilities that redefined galactic understanding of space warfare. Ships that moved faster than physics should have allowed, weapons that reached across impossible distances with perfect accuracy, and coordination that suggested real-time communication across light years. The engagement lasted less than 4 hours. When it ended, the Zarathi had lost 30% of their attacking force and retreated in complete disorder. More importantly for galactic politics, the entire conflict had been broadcast on open channels, ensuring that every spacefaring species witnessed the demonstration. Back in the human diplomatic complex, Elena watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The response had been swift, decisive, and precisely calibrated to send the right message to multiple audiences simultaneously. "Casualty reports?" she asked Admiral Torres. "0 human losses, minimal Mindaran civilian casualties. We were able to intercept most Zarathi attacks before they reached populated areas. Zarathi losses were significant, but not devastating. They retain the capability to defend their own territory, but have lost the ability to project force aggressively for the foreseeable future." Elena nodded. The restraint was important. Humanity needed to demonstrate that their military power was used for protection, not conquest. Complete destruction of the Zarathi forces would have sent the wrong message to the galaxy. "Admiral, please transmit our standard post-conflict diplomatic package to all relevant parties. Emphasize that this action was purely defensive and that we remain committed to peaceful resolution of disputes through established council procedures." "Already prepared and transmitting. Elena, you should also know, we're receiving communication requests from over 50 species. Many are asking about joining our defense network." The demonstration had worked exactly as intended. By responding decisively to protect an ally, humanity had shown that their military capabilities were real, while their commitment to using those capabilities responsibly was genuine. The combination was irresistible to species looking for protection from aggressive neighbors. "Sarah, please schedule meetings with all serious diplomatic inquiries, but space them out over several weeks. We want to appear helpful but not desperate for allies." Over the following days, the ripple effects continued to expand. The Zarathi Empire, humbled by their failed test of human resolve, began sending diplomatic overtures suggesting they might be interested in mutually beneficial agreements with the Human Defense Network. Several other aggressive powers that had been considering similar tests quietly canceled their plans. Most significantly, the Galactic Council formally recognized humanity's defense network as a legitimate peacekeeping organization, granting it official status in interspecies law. High Arbiter Thexnal personally delivered the announcement, noting that the human response to the Mindaran crisis had demonstrated the highest principles of responsible military action. Elena stood once again before her holographic displays, but now they showed a transformed galaxy. The scattered human colonies had become the center of a vast network spanning nearly half of known space. Trade flowed along routes protected by human ships. Scientific research was conducted through partnerships facilitated by human diplomacy, and conflicts were increasingly resolved through mediation services provided by species who trusted human fairness. "The quarterly report is ready," Sarah announced, placing a data tablet before Elena. "Economic growth across our alliance network is up 37%. Interspecies conflicts are down 63% in regions covered by our defense agreements. Applications for alliance membership continue to exceed our processing capacity." Elena smiled as she reviewed the numbers. The strategy had worked beyond their most optimistic projections. By revealing their military capabilities gradually and using them exclusively for protection rather than conquest, humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history: voluntary submission to their leadership by species who genuinely wanted their protection. Any concerning developments? Elena asked. The cosmic hegemony in the far reach has been making aggressive statements about human expansion, but they're too distant to pose immediate threats. Our intelligence suggests they're trying to form their own alliance network as a counterbalance to ours. Elena nodded thoughtfully. There would always be challenges, but humanity had established itself as the galaxy's primary guarantor of peace and stability. Other species could choose to join that system or oppose it, but they could no longer ignore it. The transformation was complete. The polite, cooperative humans who had joined the Galactic Council as junior members had revealed themselves as the most formidable military power in known space. But rather than using that power for conquest, they had created something entirely new, a voluntary empire built on protection rather than domination. As Elena prepared for another day of diplomatic meetings with species seeking human protection, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their advanced technology or massive fleets. It had been their patience, their planning, and their understanding that true power came not from forcing others to submit, but from making them want your protection. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's polite side turn dark, and had discovered that the darkness was not cruelty or aggression, but the cold calculation of a species that had mastered warfare so completely that they could reshape civilization itself simply by choosing when and how to reveal what they were capable of. And the most terrifying thing of all, from the perspective of any potential enemies, was that humanity was still being polite. They were still seeking diplomatic solutions, still offering cooperation and partnership, still working within established legal frameworks. They had just made it very clear what would happen to anyone who mistook that politeness for weakness.